Imagine hearing your garage door open in the middle of the night, when no one should be home. The floor vibrates beneath your feet, and you realize whoever just entered your house knew exactly how to get in. Now imagine receiving a call from a hospital, a desperate nurse telling you your mother has fallen, only to return home to find everything you own stolen, even your family photos. Or worse, opening your front door to a man who claims it's his Times house with documents, photos, and keys that prove he once lived there. 3 strangers, 3 homes. One terrifying pattern. Someone out there isn't just breaking into houses, they're breaking into lives. Welcome to Midnight Nocturne, where every story hides a shadow, and every home has secrets you were never meant to know. Don't forget to subscribe before the next knock on the door is for you, because in tonight's story, safety is just an illusion, and your home might already be haunted by the living. I used to tell myself that the house would always tell me when something was wrong. Old wood knocks when it cools, pipes hum when someone runs the water, the furnace coughs once before it steadies to a low breath. After enough years, you learn the rhythms, you learn what each sound means. That is why the moment I felt the floor under my bed begin to tremble, the message was unmistakable. The garage door was rising. At first I just stared at the ceiling, book open on my chest, as if my brain needed those extra seconds to match vibration to cause. The second realization arrived like ice poured down my spine. No one was supposed to be here. The math was simple and terrible. My parents had already texted a photo of the ocean at the shore house and told me they would not be back until Sunday night. My brother was at a work conference out of state and had said he might grab a late breakfast on Saturday before driving home. That left me, only me. I sat up and the room swayed a little from the sudden movement.
What was that?
The paperback slapping to the floor. Through the window that faced the driveway, the darkness looked thicker than usual, like the sort of black that absorbs light instead of reflecting it. I could not make out shapes, only that the square of the garage mouth was open, a lighter rectangle within darkness. I told myself an explanation because people do that when they would rather not panic. Maybe the mechanism had glitched. Maybe my dad had tried to open or close it remotely and fired the wrong signal. Maybe someone turned around in the driveway to check their GPS and somehow tripped a phantom frequency. I said all of that inside my head while I was already crossing the room to the closet. My hands knew better than my thoughts. The bat was right where I remembered it. The same dented aluminum I had carried at 12, still sticky near the handle from ancient athletic tape. It looked ridiculous in the yellow closet light, and at the same time it looked like the only thing in the world that made sense. From the top of the stairs I could feel the vibration more clearly. 10 seconds. It always took 10 seconds for the door to grind all the way up, and then the house settled like a held breath let go. I counted those seconds, and then I counted a few more. Silence after intrusion is worse than noise. Silence means the thing you dread is now inside the perimeter. I kept the phone in my pocket but did not dial yet, because there's a part of me that is stupidly proud and another part that believes if you speak the emergency out loud, it becomes permanent. When I reached the bottom step, I heard voices. They were not loud, not confident banter, not even whispering.
Reaction.
The words were too soft to sort, as if the sound itself was wearing thick gloves. But there was rhythm and response. The back and forth of 2 men who believed they were alone in a place that did not belong to them. The voices came from the far side of the house, toward the bedrooms, toward the door that led to the backyard. I crouched enough to keep my weight on the edges of my feet so the boards would not complain, and I pressed the bat against my forearm so it would not bounce and click.
You have to help
People
me.
on
I
calls
need to
will
see
tell you
him.
not to
It
be
is
a
an
hero.
emergency.
I know that.
I am sorry.
I dialed the emergency number anyway, whispered my address, and the
Your
words
mother
that felt
isn't here.
unreal while saying them, left the line open in my pocket
No,
as the
it's not
operator tried to
possible.
keep me on. I tried to anchor me with instructions that floated past like leaves in a river
Mom,
I was
are you
already
there?
crossing. I did not want to be a hero. I wanted the house to be mine again. Near my parents' bedroom, I could hear drawers and the soft rattle of hangers and that tiny zipper sound a jewelry case makes when impatient fingers are tugging. I could picture the exact drawer they would be in. The one where my mother kept
God.
necklaces that do not look like much until you learn that one was a gift from her grandmother and another was from a promotion party when I was 10. The thought flicked a spark through me. I stepped into the doorway and shouted a word that was probably just noise, bat already raising. They were bigger than shadows and smaller than the monsters my fear had sculpted. 2 men,
Did you notice
hooded.
anything out of place?
The nearer one had his head in the closet and flinched so hard he cracked his temple on the door. The other spun, hands up reflexively like he was warding off a sudden bright light. Surprise is a weapon. I swung at the nearest leg because it is a bigger target than a head, and because something in me remembered a coach yelling, "Keep it simple." The bat connected with a hollow gong, and the man screamed and hopped and fell sideways, cursing. The second one did not run. He lunged. We collided with the floor. Breath punched from both of us, the bat rattling free as if it wanted nothing to do with what came next. He was heavier than me, the kind of weight that reads as casual power, and once his hands closed on my wrists, it felt like I had brought a toy to a knife fight. He forced one hand to my throat and squeezed. It was not a movie choke, where you claw dramatically. It was messy and stupid and full of panic. Nails scraping skin, legs kicking at nothing useful. My world narrowing to the hiss of my breath, stuttering as I fought for air that could not get past the pressure of his grip. The one with the hurt leg dragged himself toward us. His hand flashed as he lifted something that caught the bedside lamp glow just enough to send a bright pinpoint into my eyes. The blade was not large. It did not need to be. This is the part of the story where I admit I thought about my mother seeing my body here and blaming herself for being away, which is unfair and irrational, and exactly the kind of thought your mind offers when it believes time is almost over. Far away at first, then growing, I heard the sound that every frightened person wants as proof they are not alone. Sirens. They were not at the house. Not yet, but they were coming. The man on top of me turned his head just enough that the pressure on my throat shifted. I sucked a ripping breath like a fish hauled to air. He grabbed for the bat, lifted it, and for an instant I saw the way the end of it made a dark eclipse against the light. I threw up my arms, instinct, not strategy, and the world detonated in white pain. When the room stitched itself back together, I was on the floor, and a police officer's voice was threading through cotton. He kept one hand on my shoulder and told me not to move my head. The air tasted like dust and sweat and something metallic. The door from the bedroom to the backyard stood open, the screen banging lightly on its spring with the kind of innocent rhythm that made me want to laugh. The men were gone. The officers moved through the house quickly, voices clipped, boots polite on the wood. Paramedics took my vitals and shone light in my eyes and asked questions that came to me as if from underwater. I told them my name, the date, what I remembered. They said concussion and wanted to take me in. I said no, because people who have tried not to die sometimes confuse that with being invincible. My parents called back as soon as they could speak, through shock and anger. When they made it home the next day and saw the place where I had bled onto the carpet and the closet where my mother's things were still in an unholy mess, the anger found its proper target, which was me. I deserved it, and I also knew I would probably make the same decision again. The police canvassed the neighborhood and the nearby streets, and by the time the blue and red lights had faded from our windows, the men had become ghosts with shoe prints. The week after, our house transformed. Cameras on corners, motion lights that threw sudden white rectangles across the lawn when a squirrel dared to cross, a new keypad at the back door, a chime that pinged when any door opened. All of it should have calmed me. Some of it did. But the detail that would not let go had nothing to do with locks or lights. The only way to open the garage from outside was with the programmed button in my car, the button my father set up as a wireless switch years ago. I had never bothered to lock the car when it slept in the driveway, because this is the kind of laziness that does not punish you until it does. Whoever came that night knew the car would be open.
What was that?
Whoever came knew the button was there. Whoever came knew that the people who might stop them were hours away. I tried to build a list of suspects in my head and kept landing on blank space. I do not live in that room anymore. I am older now, and most nights I sleep fine, but once in a while my heart speeds up for no reason, and I find myself listening for a vibration that is not there. It is not the pain I remember most, or the panic, or even the sirens.
Emilia.
It is the particular cold of realizing the house had warned me, and I had answered, and someone else had still known how to come, inside as if they belonged. The phone rang just as the closing credits of a show drifted across the screen. It was a local number, unfamiliar, but I had only been living in this town for a few months and had gotten used to answering calls from numbers I did not recognize. The voice on the other end was calm, professional, and delivered exactly the kind of nightmare I had been dreading ever since I moved back here to be near my aging mother. She said she was a nurse at a local emergency room. She said my mother had fallen, hit her head, and was asking for me. She knew my mother's full name. She knew her address. She even mentioned the hip replacement from a few months ago. Everything about the call sounded legitimate except for the way my stomach dropped through the floor. I remember standing in the living room with the television still glowing and my keys already in my hand before the call had ended. I did not even turn off the lights. I did not even think. I shut the front door behind me without locking it, as if a door could hold back the kind of news I had just heard. The drive to the hospital was one of those drives that collapses into fragments. Traffic lights. The dull echo of my own voice telling myself to stay calm, imagining the worst and trying to push it away. For a few blocks, I was even angry at myself for not having convinced my mother to get one of those medical alert systems. I had begged her. She had refused. Now here we were. Inside the emergency room, the air smelled like disinfectant and humming machines. I rushed the front desk and gave my mother's name, spelling it out, my voice too fast, my hands gripping the counter as if pressure could make the computer screen change. The nurse at reception looked confused, then sympathetic, and told me there was no record of my mother being admitted that night. She double-checked. She asked for the spelling again. She asked me if I was sure I had the right hospital. I tried to explain about the phone, call, about the details the caller had known, about the urgency. She said she was sorry, but there was no one here by that name. I stepped outside, feeling a new kind of cold. I called my mother's landline. She answered on the second ring, groggy, wondering why I was calling so late. She had been asleep. She had not fallen. She had not been admitted anywhere. I told her I was just checking in, that she should go back to bed. I did not tell her about the phone call. I hung up and sat in my car, staring at the hospital doors. The realization came in a single wave that left me shaking. Someone had lured me out of my house. Someone had known exactly what to say to make me leave in a hurry. And they had known more than enough to make me believe it. I drove back as fast as I dared. The house looked normal from the driveway. The front door was still shut, the same soft glow leaking out from the kitchen light I had left on. For a heartbeat, I let myself believe I was paranoid. Then I stepped inside. The air was wrong. It was a stillness that had weight, a rearranged emptiness. You know immediately when someone has been in your space. The living room was stripped of its comfort. The television was gone. My laptop was gone. The small jewelry box I kept in my bedroom was gone. But as I moved from room to room, my confusion grew. Family photos had been taken from their frames. Not the frames themselves, just the photos. Prescription bottles from the bathroom had been emptied and taken. Things with no resale value, things with no purpose for a thief looking for quick cash, were missing. The theft felt personal, like a hand reaching into my memories. I called the police, voice flat with defeat. By the time an officer arrived, my certainty had turned into a strange numbness. I told them everything about the phone call. I repeated the details the caller had known. The officer's expression shifted from skeptical to unsettled. They agreed it had been a setup. But when I asked them who could possibly have that information, they had no answer. They took notes, told me to call if anything new happened, and left me standing in my gutted living room. I walked through the room slowly, touching the empty spaces where my life had been. The missing photos hurt most of all. They had been of vacations, birthdays, my mother when she was younger, pieces of time no one else should care about. I imagined the hands that had plucked them from their frames. Imagined someone staring at them in a place I would never see, flipping through my history as if it were theirs. The medicine bottles bothered me too. Not because of the inconvenience of replacing them, but because it meant whoever had come here knew about my prescriptions. They knew what I took and when I took it. They had touched the intimate corners of my life. Over the next few days, I kept trying to figure out how they had known so much. My mother could not remember who she might have talked to about her personal information, but I knew she had a habit of being open with strangers. She had friends who liked to gossip. She would chat with cashiers, with church acquaintances, with people she barely knew. I started to suspect she had let slip too much to the wrong person, and that they had used her trust as a map. Even that did not fully explain the precision of the scam. The timing had been perfect. They had known I was new to the area. They had known my schedule. They had known how to hit me at my weakest spot. Nights were the worst. Every creak of the duplex sounded like a step. Every ring of my phone jolted me like a trap springing. I installed a Ring camera at the front door, thinking maybe the blinking blue light would scare whoever it was away. I tried to tell myself the theft had been a one-time thing. But the empty frames on my shelves were like mouths. They made the rooms feel hollow. They made me feel watched. When the police called back a week later, they had nothing new. No fingerprints, no leads, no suspect. They said the number that had called me was a prepaid phone bought with cash. They said these kinds of scams happen sometimes, but they admitted they had never seen one with this level of personal detail. They told me to be cautious, to document anything strange. I thanked them and hung up, staring at the camera feed on my phone, even though it showed nothing but my quiet porch. I warned my mother about all of it. I told her she had to be careful about who she talked to, about what information she gave away. She promised to be more guarded. I wanted to believe that would be enough. But every time I walked past the empty frames, or opened the medicine cabinet to find gaps where bottles used to be, I felt the same creeping thought. Whoever had done this was not finished. They had my photos, my prescriptions, my trust. They had been inside my house and inside my life, and I had no idea what they were planning next. It started with pounding. Not knocking, not the hesitant rhythm of a delivery driver or a neighbor, but the kind of pounding that shakes the frame of the door like it's going to splinter. It was a Thursday night around 11, and I had been halfway through brushing my teeth, ready to wind down for bed. This neighborhood had always been quiet, the kind of place where people wave from their driveways and keep their dogs on leashes. The pounding didn't belong. It sounded like an alarm you could feel in your bones. I went to the front window first, pushing aside the curtain. The porch light was useless. It hung too high and too dim, casting more shadow than illumination. All I could make out was a restless shape on the other side of the screen door. He was moving, pacing, shoulders twitching, hair sticking up like he'd been sleeping rough or running for a long time. I'm a big guy, and I've never thought of myself as easily scared, but something about the way he moved froze me. It was anger and desperation coiled together. I opened the main door, but kept the screen latched. "Can I help you?" I asked. He didn't answer my question. He shouted his own. He said this was his house. He said I was trespassing. He said I needed to get out or he would call the police. His voice was raw, the kind of hoarse that comes from screaming or crying for hours. Up close, I could see his eyes darting, not just around me, but past me, like he was checking the rooms behind me for ghosts. I told him he had the wrong place, but he only grew more agitated. Then he began to rattle off details that made my skin crawl. He knew about the master bedroom door that smacks into the toilet if you open it too quickly. He knew the back door sticks unless you lift it a little as you turn the knob. He knew details you could not see from outside, things that only someone who had actually lived here would know. I didn't even remember what I said back. I think I just stared at him, mouth dry, as if my own memory was being questioned. Then he reached into a folder and began showing me papers through the screen. A lease agreement with his name on it dated 6 months before I had moved in. Pieces of mail addressed to him at this address. They looked official at a glance, the kind of thing that could fool an overworked clerk or a distracted cop. My mind reached for explanations. Maybe they were forged. Maybe he was part of some scam. But before I could finish the thought, he pulled out his phone. The photos were what did it. He swiped through images of himself inside my house. Not just in the living room, but on my couch, in the kitchen, in the bedroom that was now mine. He showed me one taken on the 4th of July. A woman I had never seen holding the camera. Fireworks and a box off to the side. Everyone smiling around the kitchen table. The photo looked recent. The light in the window matched the light I remembered that day. The kitchen looked exactly as it had looked that afternoon. I knew for a fact I had been here alone on the 4th of July. But here was a photograph of a stranger claiming he had been here too. I felt something slide loose inside my mind. For a moment, I wondered if I was losing time, if I had blocked out living with someone else, if my memories had gaps big enough to hide a whole other life. The man kept talking, telling me this was his house, telling me I had no right to be here, showing me more evidence like a prosecutor dismantling a defense. I finally managed to say I was going to call the police. I didn't even say it angrily. I said it like someone reaching for a lifeline. His demeanor changed instantly. The agitation drained away. He became calm, almost polite. He said he would wait outside while I made the call. Then he walked off the porch and vanished into the darkness like he had been waiting for that cue. I watched from the window, but could not see where he went. When the police arrived 10 minutes later, I explained everything. They listened, asked a few questions, and told me to reach out to my landlord to get in touch with the previous tenants. They waved off my offer to show them my lease. They said it was probably someone having a mental episode. They told me to lock my doors and get some rest. Then they left. I stood in the doorway for a long time after they were gone, staring at the porch like it might hold answers. My landlord was shocked when I called him. He had owned this house for years. He had never rented to anyone matching the man's description. He gave me the contact information for the previous tenants. They had lived here alone for 3 years before moving out. They had never heard of the man. They did not recognize him from my description. They could not explain how he had detailed knowledge of the house. For the next 2 weeks, nothing happened. I told myself it had been an elaborate scam, that I had dodged it, that he would not be back. I changed my routines a little, checked the locks twice at night, left, a light on in the hallway. Slowly, my body stopped bracing at every sound. Slowly, I let myself believe it was over. Then I came home one night from drinks with friends to find the front door shut and the lights just as I had left them. I stepped inside, and the smell hit me. First, a faint, unsettled air, as if the rooms had been stirred and left to settle. The living room was upside down. Not ransacked in the quick grab-and-go way of a typical burglary, but turned over as if someone had been searching for something specific. Cushions slit, drawers dumped, closets rifled. Most of my electronics and valuables were still there. The television was still on the wall, the laptop was still on the desk, the obvious targets untouched. Only the sense of violation was missing from nowhere. The police came again. This time they took it more seriously. There were no signs of forced entry. The locks had not been broken. It suggested whoever did this had a copy of my key. Given the timing, it seemed obvious it was the same man. The landlord changed all the locks immediately, free of charge. He installed extra security measures. The police said they would patrol more often. I tried to remember every detail of the man's documents, but the images blurred in my head. I wished I had looked closer at the lease agreement. I wished I had asked to see his ID. But in the moment, I had been too stunned to think. Now, the only evidence I had were the memories of photographs that might have been forged, but felt real, and the certainty that someone had walked through my home looking for something I could not name. My friends told me I was overthinking it. They said it was probably a scammer who had broken in to look for hidden valuables. They said the photos could be old, doctored, anything. One friend joked that maybe I was up against something not entirely natural. A ghost convinced it still owned the property. I laughed because that's what you do when you don't want to admit. You're scared. But at night, alone, I felt the weight of the idea. The photographs had not been clumsy. The knowledge had not been vague. The key had not been guessed. Since then, I live with a constant unease, like a low-grade hum in the walls. I double-check the new locks, but sometimes I think about the man's calm expression when I said I was calling the police. It was the look of someone who already had a plan, someone who knew something I didn't. I keep telling myself it's over. I keep telling myself this house is mine. But in the quiet hours, I still find myself staring at the walls, wondering if somewhere, someone else is staring at photographs of my life, convinced they belong here more than I do. The 3 stories did not seem connected at first. A young man alone in his parents' house confronting intruders. A daughter tricked out of her duplex by a call about her mother. A tenant face to face with a stranger who claimed ownership of his home. 3 different people, 3 different locations. But when you step back, when you stop thinking of them as separate incidents and start reading them like chapters, the threads begin to tighten around you. It begins with knowledge. In each case, the intruder knew too much. The first break-in wasn't a random burglary. Whoever opened that garage door knew where the wireless switch was hidden, and knew the house would be empty except for one young man. They knew which drawers to rifle, what nights the parents were gone. The second wasn't a random scam call. Whoever dialed that number knew the mother's medical history, the daughter's schedule, and the one fear guaranteed to get her out the door without locking it. And the third wasn't just some delusional vagrant. He knew the house's quirks, the sticking doors, the bathroom layout, the exact look of the kitchen on a holiday. Knowledge is the fingerprint of obsession. It continues with timing. None of the attacks happened during the day, when neighbors might be watching. None of them happened on nights when other people might be home. Each event was a perfect slice of isolation carved out of normal life. That precision implies someone watching, waiting, building a calendar of vulnerabilities. A burglar looking for quick cash doesn't need that level of detail. A stranger looking for a specific object, a specific feeling, or a specific person does. Then there's the choice of what to take. In the first story, the intruders were in the mother's closet, going through personal items instead of electronics. In the second, the thieves stripped the frames of their photos and emptied prescription bottles but left behind bigger ticket items. In the third, the house was turned upside down, but the obvious valuables were untouched. Each scene looks less like theft and more like excavation, someone digging through lives for hidden veins of meaning. What they're looking for may not be something you can hold. That is why the 3 stories read like a single experiment. First, test the perimeter. Can you get inside? Second, test the lure. Can you remove someone from the space by pushing their fear button? Third, test the identity. Can you insert yourself into their reality and make them doubt their own? Each escalation, less about property, more about power. The pattern is what chills you. It suggests the same mind or the same group, moving from one tactic to another, refining their technique. Or if you prefer the kind of explanation that lives under your bed, something older and stranger trying on human routines the way you try on a jacket. The people involved describe a feeling that goes beyond fear. In the first story, he felt compelled to defend his house, as if some invisible force had pulled him toward danger. In the second, she described a sadness at the theft of her photos, as if the crime had reached backward into her memories. In the third, he admitted to questioning his sanity, wondering if he was the intruder instead of the victim. Those reactions are symptoms of the same infection. Once your home stops being a safe boundary, it stops being a map of the world. You lose north. You lose the line between inside and outside. What if the intruders weren't just taking things? What if they were taking the sense of safety itself? That would explain why their choices seem senseless to a normal thief. Safety is the invisible furniture of a life. Once it's gone, you don't sit the same way. You don't breathe the same way. Every noise becomes a signal, every object a potential threat. In that state, you're easier to control, easier to watch, easier to lead where they want you to go. And there is another possibility. The third man's photographs are the key that rattles the lock of the mind. They are either forged with a skill that defies detection, or they are real in some way that breaks the ordinary sequence of time. If they are real, then either someone has been staging a life inside his home without him knowing, or there's a layer of reality he cannot see. Maybe he is not the first to live there. Maybe he is living inside someone else's story, stepping into a script already written. Maybe the first 2 stories were rehearsals, and he is the performance. Think about it long enough, and the shape emerges. Someone out there, someone or something, has been moving from house to house, family to family, looking for more than cash, looking for access, looking for the intimate details that let them slide under the door of your life without a key. They collect your photos because photos are memory. They learn your medical history because your body is a map of your vulnerabilities. They show up at your door with documents because paperwork is proof, and proof is the currency of reality. Piece by piece, they build a version of you they can own. Imagine all 3 narrators speaking at once. The young man whispering into a live 911 call, while footsteps slide across his parents' bedroom. The daughter staring at empty frames while her mother sleeps unaware. The tenant standing at his screen door staring at photos of himself he never posed for. Their voices overlap in a single refrain. Someone knows too much. Someone is already inside. Someone is making me doubt what's mine. The stories aren't warnings about crime. They're warnings about intrusion into the self. By the time the viewer reaches this point, the houses on the screen are no longer just houses. They're mirrors. They're showing you how thin the walls really are. They're asking you how much of your life is already visible to strangers, how many doors you leave unlocked without thinking, how many numbers you answer without questioning. Because the line between the 3 stories and your own life is smaller than you want to believe. The knock on the door in the middle of the night, the call from an unknown number, the sense that a room feels different when you walk back into it. These are all versions of the same message. You can tell yourself it's coincidence, You can tell yourself it's just 3 unlucky people, but the pattern is still there, waiting. And if you're watching this now, if you're feeling your own heartbeat pick up, if you're glancing at your windows while you listen, then you've already felt it. The quiet knowledge that someone could be building a map of you right now. They don't need to break your lock. They only need to know you well enough to make you open the door yourself. And once you've accepted that, your home is no longer a fortress. It's a stage. And you're already in the play. Home is supposed to be the safest place you know. 4 walls, a roof, a place where you can breathe without looking over your shoulder. But these stories remind us how fragile that comfort really is. 3 people believed their locks, routines, and familiarity would protect them. Each one discovered that safety isn't built from wood and metal. It's built from awareness, and once awareness fails, everything else follows. The first learned that courage doesn't always save you, that sometimes the right choice is to hide and let help come. The second learned that fear can be used against you, that even love for family can become a weapon when someone understands what will make you move. The third learned that possession is an illusion, that a home isn't truly yours if someone else has the map of your life memorized. These lessons sound simple until they're yours to learn at midnight with a stranger breathing on the other side of the door. What connects these stories isn't just intrusion, it's familiarity twisted into threat. The intruders knew every detail, every habit, every weak point. That's what real horror looks like. When someone uses your own life as the blueprint for your undoing. It's not about ghosts or demons. It's about the people who watch too closely, who learn too much, who decide your privacy is theirs to take. So what can you do? Start with vigilance. Lock your doors even when you think you don't have to. Don't overshare the details of your life online or with strangers who haven't earned them. Don't dismiss the strange noise in the dark just because logic tells you it's nothing. And if something feels wrong, trust that feeling. It's your mind's last defense against becoming another chapter in a story like this. But beyond caution, remember this. Fear only wins when it silences you. These victims survived because they acted, because they refused to pretend the danger wasn't real. If anything like this ever happens to you, don't hesitate. Call for help. Run. Live to tell the story, because survival is the only way to turn horror into warning. And as the lights fade, remember someone out there is always watching, learning, planning. The next vibration on your floor, the next call from an unknown number, the next knock at your door could be nothing, or it could be everything. This was Midnight Nocturne, where every home hides a shadow and every story whispers a truth you're not ready to hear. Subscribe now before the lights in your own house flicker, and you realize the story isn't over. It's just moved closer to home.